back to Beer Fueled Fantasy Football, episode 151, where I'm going to put Dan Thury and Christopher Hopper on the hot seat. We're going to go through some of the rankings episodes we just did. I deep dove some stats for these guys. I got 3 questions on each position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. Are you guys excited for this?
I'm actually really excited for this.
Me too. My seat's feeling kind of warm.
Mine is too.
Well, thankfully, we do have cold beer for them to cool off a little bit if the seat does get too hot. We are Beer Fueled Fantasy Football. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Untapped at Beer Fueled FF. YouTube, Beer Fueled Fantasy Football, where you can subscribe for entries into the Listener League still.
Maybe. It really depends on when we record Wednesday's episode for next week.
It's true. Most likely. So, to be announced. We'll see. Check Twitter. Follow that first. You'll get more information.
Whenever the last day is, I will spam out more tweets saying this is the absolute last day. So
perfect. We'll look. Go ahead and look forward to that. Make sure you do follow us on Twitter for all of our news updates.
I guess me saying that right now or telling them to look on Twitter if this comes out after that happens.
They'll see the tweet though.
You'll know already.
All right. Individually, I'm at Nick Sparts. Dan Thury across the table from me.
At Thury BFF, what's up, guys?
And to my left, Christopher Hopper.
At Hot BFF with you, peace.
All right. So in this episode, as I said, I'm going to go through all those. Make sure you do check back on our rankings episode on the for the last 7. We did 2 episodes for quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, 1 for tight ends. And then around the time you guys are listening to this episode, I'm going to hopefully have consensus rankings out and pinned on our Twitter profile for you guys. It'll be just one nice document with our top 150, and then quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends for you guys, so you can see how we feel going into the draft. And we'll try to update those once a week for you through the preseason.
All right.
Let's hit a beer preview.
Beer Fuel.
And on today's episode, we've got Oddside Ale's Raspberry Blood Orange Fruitsicle. It's their 3rd time on the show. I believe favorite of theirs that we've had so far was the Fun Size Stout.
That was Pollyanna.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was the Oddside one we had then?
We had one of their sweet potatoes, I think, and then we had bean flicker.
The sweet potato one is the one I'm thinking of.
Yes.
Okay. That was a very good one. But they are based out of Grand Haven, Michigan. They kind of do some weird kind of flavor combinations, so it's a little bit different stuff. But we'll go ahead and give you a full review later in the episode here. It does clock in at 4.5%. It's lactose raspberry blood orange added to a mixed fermentation ale. I'm not quite sure what all those words mean, but we'll go ahead and roll with it.
We've had them twice.
Lactose has to do with milk. What do we had?
We've had Bean Flicker and
Falcon
Punch.
Falcon Punch.
Falcon Punch was very good.
Falcon Punch was delicious. I still have one of those, I think, maybe. No, I don't. Never mind. I have the can art.
Cool. Great point, Hopper.
Good talk.
All right. Let's see what drop you got for this.
Nick asks questions or something.
Or something.
The longer one.
All right. And these questions will all have slightly different formats, but it could be anything from, hey, you need to pick between A and B to you guys might have to defend your position on something to
it should also
trying to crystal ball this.
Should also be noted that Dan and I have no idea what's coming. This is not something that was sent out before this started. We've had no prep time, no lead time. So
this is the first episode I have not sent you guys a show document for.
I'm fine with that. I like this.
It'll be fun.
It'll be fun.
All right. Question 1 for quarterbacks. As we discussed multiple times, Deshaun Watson had a 9.3% touchdown rate last year with 19 touchdowns on 204 attempts. Tom Savage and TJ Yates had a 3.09% touchdown rate and 310 attempts with mostly the same weapons. Will Fuller did miss a few games. Which number will be closer to the touchdown rate this year for Deshaun Watson, and why? 6.2% would be the median.
Oh, God, that's lower.
I'm taking the under on that.
I mean, like, traditionally, I think when Mike Wright guest starred on Matt Kelly's podcast, shout out to Player Profile Matt Kelly and the Road on the World podcast, it's only happened once where a guy who's gone plus 7.5 that has posted a 6 or more. I believe that was Rodgers. So traditionally it doesn't happen that much. Though I think Hopper, you've mentioned that a lot of the quarterbacks there have gone 5 or more. I think he can be somewhere in the low 5s, which should be still very good.
Yeah, that's exactly the point that I was going to make, is that it could be somewhere in the low 5s, which 5 is still considered very good, like you just said, but that 9.5 is unheard of, and even 6+ would be good, especially with those weapons.
That's elite almost.
Right. So I do think it's going to be closer to the 3.02. That doesn't mean that I'm saying it's going to be in the 3s or even in the 4s. I definitely expect low 5, but it was so absurdly high last year that that's still closer to the lower side.
Yep. And the other thing I want to point out about this too, in 6.5 games, you only had 204 attempts. He was not throwing the ball a ton.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind when you are evaluating his weapons this year. Question 2 for quarterbacks. Tampa Bay starting quarterback averaged 19.7 fantasy points per game in 2017, 5th best overall. So after their 3-week ugly start to the season with the Eagles, Steelers, and Bears, is it worth considering starting whoever the Buccaneers starting QB is through the rest of the season with a pretty easy schedule?
I would expect it to be Jameis Winston, and I would say yes, absolutely, because he was the QB1 after he came back. If I'm in any type of bad quarterback situation, be it the guy I drafted is underperforming, or I'm streaming, or there's an injury, Jameis Winston's a target player for me.
Yeah, I mean, he was my QB5. I'm stupid high on Winston. I love this offense. I love his weapons. I hate Dirk Cutter, but there's so much there to love. And for what he was able to do last year when he came back from his shoulder injury, I think QB1 is where he's going to be, either back end or mid, but he's definitely worth picking up or even drafting if you have a deeper bench.
All right. And then last question on quarterbacks. Starting in week 9 through week 15 last year, which was the last full game Roethlisberger played, he averaged 21.84 fantasy points per game over that stretch, which would have been good for quarterback 2 last year. This is also when Juju broke out and he started seeing 5+ targets for the entire rest of the season. Should the emergence of Juju as a great wide receiver 2 on the team push Roethlisberger higher than he is currently going in ADP?
What's his ADP right now?
What's ADP?
Yeah, that. I think I've stated before, it's right around the same time where the defense collapsed. You have Switzer's horrible injury. Shazier's horrible injury, and then Joe Hayden got hurt as well, and then that defense collapsed, and you got to see them having to throw a shit ton more.
He is going 11-01, 15th quarterback off the board.
Love that.
Yeah, well, the question was, should it be higher? Yes. It should be probably 2 to 3 rounds higher.
Okay, so that would put him into round late 8, early 9, which would put him quarterback 9 or 10 in between Garoppolo and Stafford.
That's about where he should be, in my opinion.
I'm assuming you'd take Stafford over him, but not Garoppolo.
Yes.
Yes,
and the answer to the other part of that is I do think that Juju is what pushes that. He was seeing, I think it was 7+ targets a game, even with AB there. And
his floor was 5.
And his floor was 5. So that's really good volume numbers.
I think from weeks 9 on, he was the QB1 last season. I thought it was.
Yeah, during that
that stretch.
From week 9 to 15, he was the one.
There's a shit ton of upside to that.
But Wilson had a higher point per game for the whole season.
Yeah, I just expect that defense not to be as great, so I have a lot more faith in them.
All right, so if you are watching on YouTube, you do see Hopper taking a call right now, so we will try to stall this next question until he gets back. But kicking off here, Mark Ingram is suspended for 4 games. Over the last 2 seasons, he's averaged 14.82 fantasy points per game played. What is your draft strategy for drafting an elite running back in a timeshare who's going to miss 5 of the first 6 games? So how are you trying to play this with your draft strategy?
Well, they're the Saints were the number 1 rushing team last year. I do expect Drew Brees to be a lot better. At least, positively regressing. Mark Ingram, a lot how I approached Doug Martin last year, who was suspended for the first, I think, 4 games.
Mm-hmm. 3. He served
3, but he had to be pushed because of the week 1 bye. I think he was a 6th, 7th round pick for a lot of leagues, and I think Ingram's going to be a great spot there. That's where I would like to take him. I think his ADP is more in the 5th round, and that's where you start to look at more of those home run, higher upside, type of guys. He was an RB1 last year. I think he was the RB8 or something like that. I think in full point leagues, and I do expect that. I do expect that to be the same, even with an uptick in Drew Brees' offense, because just like Kamara, will get involved in the passing game.
So that didn't really answer the question though. Like, how are you? So he is going in the 5th round. So if you're taking him in the 5th. How are you trying to set up your team if you're thinking of targeting Mark Ingram?
I would try to go running back heavy, so you don't have to rely on him as your RB1 or 2, especially an RB1. But in the 5th round, if you're going to take him at his ADP, you're going to probably have already drafted 2 running backs. If you've gone wide receiver heavy, I wouldn't look to take him because there is risk that maybe he doesn't get his full job back. So with my strategy, if I'm going to take him, I would try to make him as my RB3 or even better as my RB4.
So your ideal strategy then would be something like, say you're grabbing like David Johnson, Bell, something like that at the top of the first.
Yeah.
Going.
This is a guy where if I'm picking top 4 and I can get one of the big 4, turn around, maybe try to grab a mix in with Cooper, with Doug Baldwin, with Gronk, and then try to get Mark Ingram maybe on that
on the 5th turn.
4 and 5 turn.
All right. I don't want to stall here too long, so we'll maybe just flip this question back to Hopper at the end. But let's go to question 2 for running backs. Saquon Barkley is the 4th running back over the last 6 years to be drafted in the top 5. The previous 3 averaged over 250 fantasy points in the rookie season, which does include Trent Richardson in those numbers.
Yep, 2012.
That would have been the running back 7 last year in 2017. Does Barkley exceed this number and a half PPR, and by how much are you expecting him to exceed it?
So you said 250 points.
It was like 250 and like 0.6 or something.
That I think it's fair. I really do. If he does succeed it, that's tough because that's a lot of points for running back. We've been spoiled with Zeke, with Fournette, even with Richardson. For the 1 year, for his rookie year. But I don't think he'll succeed that. I'm trying to pinpoint in my head just how much it would take for him to get there. How many points did you project him to have this year?
So I did project him to exceed it. Here, give me just a moment. I do not have my running back projections out in front of me right now. So just as a reference point too, Zeke was the highest of the 3 at 311.4, which was good for a top 3 finish that year.
And Zeke was that pretty much entire offense that season.
I projected Barkley for 297.5 points and a half-point PPR.
Okay, so you'd probably have to finish as number 2 or number 3 in targets, and then
Yep, he was the number 3 target. He had 260 carries, 12 touchdowns, and I had him for about 1,800 yards.
I think Zeke's I think Zeke's path to that 311 points, and especially with all those touches, was a lot clearer than with Barkley. We project him to have a lot of targets, but they still got Ingram. They still love Shepard. Obviously, Odell's going to come in at least 140, plus in that offense. But we've seen what the Giants can produce and what Manning's had, traditionally with Ahmad Bradshaw, as his last true down back. So I think 250 is a fair projection.
Okay,
for those points.
So you're leaning higher, but not by much.
I'm leaning higher, but yeah.
Okay. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have averaged just 18.1 fantasy points per game over the last 4 years, which would have been tied for 26 in 2017, and 3 of those 4 years they were bottom 6 in average points per game for the running back position. How much of an improvement, if any, can we expect from the addition of Ronald Jones? So basically, the question is, how can a incompetent run offense suddenly become competent?
So if you watch Jones's highlights, I'm the lowest on him, I think, on the show. I think that's always been the same. He hasn't shown to be a pass catching back, even though people would just assume he's going to be one because of his size. He is getting bigger, which is what I want to see. But you traditionally,
no, I'm actually the lowest. I got him at 36. You got him at 31.
Well, I'm saying when we did our rookie previews.
Oh yes,
for him. I do like his upside. It's got to be better because he's got to be the most talented running back in that backfield. A lot of it's going to have to do with the offensive line, though, because he had a lot of bigger holes with USC, with those big gains. He is good in open field space, but if the Bucs struggle to block, he may struggle to find that type of big play ability. On top of the fact that, again, a lot of mouths to feed here. Charles Sims has already been said that he's a starting pass catching back. I hope that's a lie. But Peyton Barber is still a thing, as much as Hopper doesn't want him to be. He's still a thing there. Chris Rogers maybe a thing if he makes a team, which I'm assuming he will. So it helps.
So they were bottom, as I said, they were bottom 6 last 3 of the last 6 years. Where do you see Ronald Jones taking them to, like, in terms of total points per game rankings? Like, are they going to be a bottom 5, 6 team? Are they going to be a maybe a little below average team? Average.
You got a bad defense, which means you're going to be behind. You got to throw more. I don't think Winston's traditionally used his running backs a lot in the pass catching game. So with that, who knows? I mean, like you can't get much worse. Maybe they can hit 20. And, you know, they can be more middle of the pack, lower. But I think at bottom 10, bottom 12 is where they'll finish.
The finish. Okay.
Do I get to do a makeup test here?
You are going to get to do a rapid fire version of the questions.
Okay.
All right. First question is Mark Ingram suspended for 4 games. He has averaged 14.82 fantasy points per game played over the last 2 seasons. So basically an elite running back. He is in a timeshare, though. Will miss 5 of the first 6 games. He's going early in the 5th round. What is your draft strategy if you're taking Mark Ingram?
That I want to pair him with a guy like Isaiah Crowell or Royce Freeman or somebody that has a chance to break out and see decent volume over those first couple weeks, and watch Terrence West in training camp.
Okay. Saquon Barkley is the 4th running back over the last 6 years to be drafted in the top 5. Previous 3, including Trent Richardson, is one of them. Averaged over 250 total fantasy points in the rookie season. That would have finished for RB7 in 2017. Does Barkley exceed this number in a half-point PPR, and by approximately how much? Zeke was the record at 311.4.
What was the number? 250?
250 fantasy points.
250 fantasy points for Barkley. Let me look at my projections real quick. Yes, he does. I've got him at 308.
Okay, so you got him close to what Zeke did as a rookie.
Yes.
All right, I think that's probably enough to answer that question.
With the receiving upside.
All right, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have averaged just 18.1 fantasy points a game over the last 4 years. Last year would have been tied for 26th in terms of total points per game. And they've had 3 bottom 6 finishes over the last 4 years. How much of an improvement, if any, can we expect from the additional Ronald Jones to their overall rushing offense?
Marginal. Ronald Jones, I think, is a great talent if you can get him into space, but the problem is you have to get him into space. And even between the tackles, I think that he's adequate, but I don't think it's going to be a massive improvement unless the passing game really takes off to open up some space for him.
All right, so basically, you're not expecting a big improvement in the running game overall for this team.
No.
All right. That's all we got. Time for a beer review.
Oh, cool. Good.
Welcome back. Now
Welcome
press
back.
buttons.
That was good. Sorry about that, guys. Power company stuff.
Beer review.
What do you guys think of Oddside Ales Raspberry Blood Orange Fruitsicle?
Love it. If you like raspberry, you're going to love this beer. A lot of raspberry up front, which a nice citrus finish is where you get most of the blood orange. If you get much of any from, it's very drinkable. Like I said, crisp, light. I'm assuming about a medium body, so light medium body.
Yeah, it's definitely really, really crisp, really light. It's not heavy at all, but a ton of raspberry flavor in this one. Citrus from the blood orange pokes out a little bit, but it's mostly raspberry. And you do get a little creaminess also from the lactose that it's brewed with. I can definitely taste that in there, or not really taste, but feel that in the body of it as well.
Yeah, it's gotten better. First sip was a little too raspberry forward for me, but as I'm drinking more of it, it's kind of smoothing out a little bit. And I'm getting a little bit of that actual fruitsicle type flavor to it, which I enjoy. Very, very light, very little beer flavor at all in this whatsoever. It's almost straight fruit and sweetness to it.
Yeah, it's a little bit on the back end. You get a little bit of beer skunk,
but not much. So if you're looking for a beer, not what you're looking for. If you're looking for something more unique, which is generally kind of what Oddside is doing anyway, you're not getting classic beer from them. Definitely kind of a great example of just another interesting beer choice that's different than what other people are doing.
Except Falcon Punch. Falcon Punch was more beer.
That was of the 3 we've had. That
was the exception to the rule.
That was the closest to beer, and it was still even a little bit of a weird twist. All right. Anything else we want to add before we kick off to wide receivers?
Nope. Let's go to wide receivers.
All right. Question 1 on wide receivers. Kenny Stills finished as wide receiver 49 in 2016 and wide receiver 35 in 2017. You both have him ranked below wide receiver 50 in your rankings right now. Why do you think he'll underperform his finish the last 2 seasons with 223 targets that are now available with the loss of Landry and Julius Thomas?
Well, the addition of Albert Wilson cuts into that some, and I think it's just more the fact that I don't want to like Kenny Stills. I don't know if I can give you it's probably a shit reason, but I don't know if I can give you a real statistical reason for that. There's other guys in other situations like, okay, I like this guy's upside more. I like this guy's potential more, and I just don't generally love the Miami offense, but Kenny Stills is a guy that a lot of people, I think, share that opinion. So Stills could be a steal towards the end of your draft. Albert Wilson's going to be a steal towards the end of your draft, and I would really take a dart throw on either one of them. But he probably does need to move up for me. I think it's just a matter of, I look at other guys and I'm like,
So it's more of a gut thing than a statistical thing.
It is
for you.
more of a gut thing than a statistical thing. Let me see where he was for me statistically while Dan talks.
Yeah, for me, it like I don't like this offense at all. There's a lot of mouths to feed, which I think is now becoming the show, at least my saying. Obviously Parker, Gesicki, you have the two running backs and Drake and Ballage, even though, and then Wilson, Danny Amendola.
Yeah, forgets Frank Gore, who's a decent pass catching back.
If they use him as one,
It still's projected out.
but then again, what did you project to?
36 was where he projected out points wise for me.
Okay, so much higher than you have him ranked.
Yes, about 14 positions.
So, just like I said, there's a lot of mouths to feed. An offense that just may be the worst in the league next year, or for this upcoming season.
Buffalo's got that one. And
Buffalo probably
I'm pretty
does.
sure.
But there's just not a lot, to love in this situation for him.
And I'm not saying I love him. I got him ranked as a wide receiver 3, but I think there's just enough volume there that he has to float that high.
We've talked
Projected
positively about him too. Before.
legitimately about the back end of my wide receiver threes.
All right. Question 2. Sammy Watkins has averaged 10.8 fantasy points per game over his career in half-point PPR. Last year would have made him wide receiver 23. Is he going to exceed or fall short of his career average in 2018, and why?
Well, I projected as my wide receiver 23 when I did projections. So that's good news. What was his point average?
10.8 in half PPR.
That'd actually be about what I have him projected at, too. He was projected at 164.1. So
slightly lower.
Under. Slightly under. And again, it's everything I mentioned in Monday's episode when we talked about Travis Kelce. You've got Tyreek Hill, Kareem Hunt, that you also have to feed, and then you've got a quarterback who's going to be playing his first meaningful snaps in his first meaningful games this year. So you kind of have to take note of that. And Sammy Watkins, I don't know what it was with the Rams, if it was just an inability to adapt on their part, on his part, whatever.
The no training camp.
Yeah, you got to see how he actually fits in, because over the last several seasons, wide receiver 2s for the Chiefs haven't really been it, and Tyreek Hill's been exceptional, so you can't really say that Watkins comes into this situation and is default the one.
Yeah, it's like I said, we project this offense to be a lot of passes here. But there's gonna be growing pains with those. Mahomes, like I said, he's pretty much a rookie coming into this season in terms of what he's done on the field so far. And there are going to be games where I think he's going to have some of those dud weeks. I think he will not reach that the first 6, 7, 8 weeks of the season, and then maybe that upticks more as that chemistry is built, as the offense kind of starts to click and they start to feel each other out more.
All right. Last question for wide receivers. Alshon Jeffrey averaged 14.72 fantasy points per game on 8.8 targets over the last 5 games before Wentz tore his ACL. Would have made him the wide receiver 5 over that stretch, compared to 9.2 fantasy points on 7.75 targets in the 8 previous games to start the season, which would have been wide receiver 38. Which of these is closer to the real Alshon Jeffrey?
Well, having dealt with Alshon Jeffrey for a while, I can tell you it's the second one. He's flashed his entire career the ability to put up big numbers, but be it injuries or whatever else, it's never really materialized. I think that the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. So I'm not saying it's extreme as wide receiver 38. I don't think there's a scenario where that happens, but I definitely don't think there's a scenario where he ends up as wide receiver 5 either. In this offense, we've talked about the offense potentially just regressing a little bit as a whole. And again, when it comes to mouths to feed, there are a lot of them here. It's not a Dolphins situation where it's a soup kitchen either. This is like a gourmet buffet line here, where as far as mouths to feed goes. And then just the peripherals on Jeffrey last year were not great. I know he picked it up at the end of the season, but Jeffrey's thing has always been when winning contested catches and kind of giving you that amazing play, and almost as a big play receiver more than a possession guy. So it's just, there's a lot of things that I'm worried about with him.
So, and just to split the difference, it is about 11.5 would be where the half point is between the two.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of, there's just two extremes to this. So, 5 or 38, just like Hopper said, there's going to be somewhere in between, probably closer to 5, but not close at all. In terms of 38, like I mentioned before, the split between him and Nelson Aguilar were, what's very real for those first 8 weeks and then the last 8 weeks of the season. I do expect at least him to be more of the wide receiver 5 that we saw towards the end of the season, or at least towards the end with Carson Wentz. But he's always been a guy where he's going to give you some dud weeks in there. So I think he's going to be closer to the middle.
And he's banged up a lot, too. I know he played through shit last year, but, it definitely impacted his performance.
Okay. Tight ends. This will be a fun one to start. There are 280 targets unaccounted for from 2016, the last year Luck played, that went to either wide receivers or tight ends. What share of this is going to be in line for Eric Ebron, and what are realistic expectations for him?
12%. we talked about this on Monday. I think that's about how I figured. I gave Eric Ebron, it was less than that. I only projected him to play 14 games because, again, last year is the only season where he's been healthy and he wasn't on the field a whole lot. But I projected him at 52 targets, 402 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. So I think this is a little bit of a bait question, Mr. Hot Seat person, but
it was tough finding tight ends that we disagreed on heavily. So
yeah. So for me, is there some value there? Yes. Is there a ton of value there? I don't think so. I think it's shifted more heavily in favor of Doyle. I think that Nyheim Hines is going to surprise a lot of people, and I think one of those other wide receivers is going to emerge a little bit.
So, and just for reference,
not Chester Rogers.
The last 3 seasons in terms of targets in Detroit, he saw 70, 85, and 86.
He was the only guy there. He didn't have Jack Doyle there.
I expect, I guess just off the top of my head, you said how many targets were there accounted for?
So 280 targets for players who are no longer on the Colts. So that would have been Moncrief, Dwayne Allen, players like that who are all gone.
There's still enough receivers there. Yeah, they're going to battle it out. You also have the running backs. They're going to steal targets. I know that you said that, coming from them. I think Ebron's going to be closer to that 70, 80 mark. It's just what he does with them. And what we've seen from him before hasn't really been great. I still think Doyle's the number 1 tight end there. And I still think Hilton's going to see majority of that target share. He might be 27% up there, top 5 in the league. So I'm going around maybe 80 targets from him.
Okay. Jordan Reed has averaged 12.15 points per game over the last 3 seasons in the games he has played, which would be second among tight ends over that stretch, but obviously doesn't play a lot of games. How should you plan your team around grabbing Reed if you're looking to target him, and where should you be targeting him in drafts?
So I'm going to start with where, and I think with where he's going right now, round 6 to 8 is probably realistic for him. As far as how do you plan your team around him, first off, if you're taking a tight end at that position, that means you punted it and you've got decent running back and wide receiver depth by that point. And you want to pair him with somebody else. George Kittle is a guy that we've talked about that would be a pretty good pairing. You could always stack him with Vernon Davis, who we know has rapport with Alex Smith, or you can just punch it, roll with Jordan Reed, and then stream if something happens to him.
And what would be your ideal way of playing it?
My ideal way of playing it would be I would be pairing him with a guy that I can grab late, like round 11 or later. So Kittle if he falls, but then that's where guys like Nick Vannett, Jordan Leggett, some of these high upside guys come into play also. I'd probably go more floor. So Charles Clay maybe.
Yeah, guys going around 11 or later right now is Doyle, Clay, Njoku, Howard, Ebron, ASJ, Watson.
Doyle would be a great one to...
You gave me the name right there.
Yeah, Doyle would be a great one to...
Reed's probably, 8-9 right now for his ADP?
804.
Yeah, so they're like... Just like Hopper said, if you're going tight end this late, you probably have stack running backs and receivers. Probably got your quarterback. There's not a lot of shame or hate, from me if you go read the Doyle, read the Kittle. You got the high upside with the good floor there from these guys, and that's how I would approach the drafting Reed. I would not draft Reed by himself, and I would not draft Reed with another high upside guy that won't give you a lot of floor. So
I'm not going to
Howard, Braden, Njoku.
Yep, I don't want to put him with Njoku. I'd like that more.
Yeah.
But Howard, Brait, Jordan Leggett, Nick Vinette, some of those guys we talked about that are just your extreme home run swings. Hayden Hurst are all guys I wouldn't put him with.
Okay. Last question on the tight ends and for this episode. Is Charles Clay, who has averaged 7.23 fantasy points per game over the last 3 years, the best pass catcher to target on this Bills offense? This is maybe a bit of a softball.
No, for me. He's second. Kelvin Benjamin's first. And knee injuries, people can hate on Benjamin all you want. When he got volume in Carolina, he produced with it. He's just got to be healthy. And I think that people kind of forget about that even though it was only like a 53% catch rate. Sorry, I forgot what word I was looking for there. Even though it was only a 53% catch rate, it's the Brandon LaFell rule. And, a wide receiver is typically going to out-target a tight end. It's just the way it normally seems to work. So
I think
as far as and I think Benjamin's a little more talented also. So yeah, he's second for me.
all right.
Which is still good.
I think the best pass catching option is probably LaShawn McCoy.
That too.
And then Benjamin, and then Clay. Like for this, it's going to be typically with the rookie quarterback. If Josh Allen wins that role, or with Peterman, who's pretty much played one game
He's
and then
going to
died,
overthrow the hell out of LaShawn McCoy.
Yeah,
based on what we've seen.
it's going to go to running backs and tight ends typically, or your most trusted receiver. He should get enough volume to be, considered one of the better pass catching backs on that, or pass catching options on that team. A lot of bad targets, though.
Okay. And for reference, LaShawn McCoy is going 302. Benjamin's going 1101, and Clay is going 1305.
I like Benjamin at 1101. I mean,
I'll take a wide receiver one upside, not upside for wide receiver one, but a wide receiver one in an
the number
offense.
one wide receiver
there
on
you
a
go.
team at 1101.
Yeah.
That's almost a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, that's upside for you.
All right. Well, that's all I got. Any other things we want to touch on for any of the players we went over? Sorry for some of the weird formatting in the running back section.
I wasn't here for that. Sorry for my run out. I'm a good coworker, so I'm covering on call for one of my coworkers. And unfortunately, as you guys have seen that have been watching the show for any length of time, when that happens, yeah, I gotta go. But other than that, no, I thought they were good questions. It was a fun episode. If you would like to put us on the hot seat, though, that's an episode I would like to do at some point. So be sure to send any questions you have to @BeerfieldFF.
Yep. And or direct messages on Reddit, BeerfieldFF. I've had a few questions come in there. Email the show, beerfieldfantasy@gmail.com. Instagram, BeerfieldFF. Facebook, Beerfield Fantasy Football.
We'll compile them for a few weeks and then do like a mailbag episode.
Yep, that'd be a lot of fun. Let's get some of your questions on players maybe you think we're too low on and ask us to defend ourselves or whatever it is you feel like having us do. I know a good one that we did not bring up in our rankings episodes is Will Fuller, which I'm sure we'll get lots of hate on.
I'm sure we will too. Or if there's just a player you'd like us to rehash that you're maybe unsure on and you want us to talk about, let us know.
Yeah, or if there's something maybe you thought we missed or should look into more, send us that information. We're happy to do that for you as well.
Yep.
So thank you so much for tuning in, guys. This is our last week. We're at 2 episodes, so starting next week, don't be shocked when your podcast suddenly starts whatever podcast platform you starts downloading an episode on Friday, because we'll be going to 3 weeks until December.
Yep. 3 weeks for the NFL season.
All right. So as always, follow us at BeerfieldFF on Twitter. Keep those questions coming. I am at Nick Sparts. Stan Theory across the table from me.
At Theory BFF.
To my left is Christopher Hopper.
At Hot BFF with 2 Ps.
And enjoy the Hall of Fame game. Hopefully it's a good start to the preseason here. And we'll catch you guys next time on Beerfield Fantasy Football.
See ya.
Peace.